Okay, this is part 4 in my blood sugar process, but here's the additional testing. Why do you need to know about the fastest growing disease syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. So if your blood sugar is elevated too long, then it has an effect on how it can actually what's considered oxidize cholesterol, which causes scarring and inflammation inside the arteries. And we can measure this by blood tests. One of the tests we can run is high-sensitive C-reactive protein and homocysteine. Ramping up these fire starters is what leads to a long list, too long to continue with these diabetic and blood sugar handling situations. Now, again, an A1C over 5.7 has been shown to do this, but you're not diabetic. That's where I'm trying to get at this. You're not diabetic, but you're already having the problem start. Also, an insulin over 12, infections, toxins, exercising way too much or not exercising at all lead to oxidation. Elevated blood sugar over time can also have an effect on your healing time, meaning that if you get scratched or you get cut, it takes you longer to heal, or if you have surgery, it takes longer for you to heal. And often, this can also be like you got sick and somebody else in your family doesn't have blood sugar issues, they're going to get over an illness usually faster. So toenail health, hair growth, all get affected, including your natural bacteria, of whom you become close friends with throughout your entire life. This is known as your microbiome. Your microbiome needs a safe environment. Can't be too hot, can't be too cold, can't be too acidic, can't be too basic. It's just right. So think of Goldilocks as your microbiome. It has to be just right. And it has to be just right for them to perform their functions, such as hormone conversion, detoxification, digestion, and immune regulation. While probiotics are essential for your gut, they're just a minute part of the microbiome. When your microbiome gets hit from maybe you needed to take an antibiotic, maybe you have too much stress, maybe you don't sleep well enough, maybe you take a medication that affects your microbiome, because a lot of them really do. Maybe you have sugar imbalances which affect your microbiome. Your microbiome then in turn loses its integrity. One of these processes is called a metabolite known as TMA. Your microbiome normally breaks down excess TMA, which comes in food that are high in choline and L-carnitine, such as beef, eggs, and cold water fish. If your intestines start to leak, a permeable membrane, or more generally known as a leaky gut, from too high or too low sugar levels, more TMA is released. The liver, being your detoxification system and your detoxification organ, along with your kidney, has to clean up the TMAO. Now it's known as TMAO, and it goes to the liver, and then it sends out to the bloodstream, and the kidney is to filter it out. So you will have more TMAO in your blood test when you're leaking, and that could be normal, but hopefully not too much. Elevation of TMAO, like homocysteine and LDL oxidation, have a 20-time fold in cardiovascular risk events when compared to cholesterol alone. So if your cholesterol is 100 or your cholesterol is 400, your risk factor really falls into 1. You have to go look at other pieces of that. What's your cholesterol triglyceride ratio? What's your LDL number? What's your HDL number? Better yet, what's your fractionation? By the way, those only get up to like a 6 times risk factor. LDL ox, TMAO, homocysteine can be 20 to 24 times more important than just looking at cholesterol alone. So I just want to drive that home. Not a lot of doctors know about that, but they will at some point. So this is very worthy of me. So anybody over the age of 25, these are things we want to take a look at. TMAO also has the ability to make things more sticky, and so it has an increased risk for clotting and embolisms. The longer these physiological changes continue, the more damage is also going to occur as well. So for about 40% of the population, they're gaining weight more rapidly than they ever remember. And by the way, quarantine is over. So what do we have now? Sometimes additional evaluations and testings are needed. So in addition, with liver tests, we run what's called an ALT and an AST and an ALP, but we might also run a GGT and a uric acid because it tests the integrity of the liver. High uric acid, which is now considered above 5.5, even though most labs have it above 7.5 and they're only looking for gout. But above 5.5 is a positive test. It has an effect on blood pressure. It has an effect on postural dizziness. You might even have right abdominal tenderness or irritable bowel syndrome, or like every time you go to the bathroom and you go number 2, you feel like you're wiping forever. You could have gout, you could have elevated triglycerides, and these are all part of a condition that's known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD. With NAFLD, your triglycerides are now replacing, triglycerides are particles of fat that circulate about your body, and eventually they're supposed to be put into the cell to help make energy. It's called lipogenesis. You're taking fat to turn it into sugar, and then you're making glucose to make energy to the body. So when these extra triglycerides are cruising around, and your liver can't process them or break them down, or better yet, they don't go into the cell, sometimes there's too much, or hormones that allow that to go in there aren't happening. They start to replace the liver cells. So you have elevated triglycerides with elevated blood pressure, with elevated A1C, with elevated sugar, with elevated insulin. It's there. And so this is where we get the beginning of NAFLD. And so when that happens, when you replace liver cells with triglycerides or fat, the liver cells are actually dying. So they put out more AST, more ALT. So we have an elevated liver enzyme count. I can't count the number of times individuals walk to my office and say, I have NAFLD. And I go, what does that mean? Well, the doctor said I had a fatty liver. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Today, the only answer I've heard is nothing, and there's not a drug for that. Well, guess what? There isn't a drug for it. And I get it. That's the world we live in. And that's my journey too. We have now linked my NAFLD to my NASH syndrome, to a liver toxic, to a medication I took for acne many years ago that unfortunately did destroy a significant amount of my liver. It destroyed my gut. It created autoimmune diseases, and added the fact that I overexercised, I created oxidation. I lost my reserve in what's called my resilience to thwart disease. Well, I was invincible in my youth. I didn't know that running ultramarathons in my teenage years and doing triathlons in my 30s and staying up and just working and doing whatever I needed to do to get done, and maybe working a night shift while I'm working another job and getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night just because I needed to as a dad. That killed me. And a lot of people do burn themselves. They burn the candle on both ends. And so that crashed me to a point of despair and hopelessness. So I get you. If you've been there, I'm there with you. So diet and exercise are hands down the most important part of NAFLD and NASH. But by the way, NASH is just more NAFLD. Here's the good part. They're both reversible. But keep in mind that NASH is one step closer to cirrhosis. And once you get to there, you might be put on a transplant list or at some point hospice care. The strategy for everyone is going to be different. So how we react to stress, how we react to food, how we react to sleep, environment, and other parts of life differently. And so goes our blood sugar. So the guidelines are very low sugar intake, which also translates to eating from home or your garden or home-raised meats. A Mediterranean diet minus the peanut and wine, or with lots of quality fats such as olive, avocado, and fish oil. You can see my podcast about this because most fish oils promote NAFLD instead of preventing it. And oh yeah, we get exercise in the form of high-intensity interval training, and this can be as short as 30 seconds or up to an hour, or you can do it 10 times a day, or you can do it 20 minutes or 20 seconds with alternate bouts of fast and slow. Literally, any form will do when it comes to high-intensity training. You just have to do it, and you have to be able to wake up the next day and do it again. So if you've gone too far, you've stressed yourself out, you've gotten to oxidative stress, you won't recover. So don't do too much. So we like to have people start very slow and work their way into it. I'm Dr. Alan Trites. Be well.